On this subject, I do not wish to think or speak or write with moderation. No, no. Tell a man whose house is on fire to give a moderate alarm. Tell him to moderately rescue his wife from the hands of the ravisher. Tell the mother to gradually extricate her babe from the fire into which it has fallen. Oh, but urge me not to use moderation in a cause like the present.
In 1831, William Lloyd Garrison published the first issue of The Liberator. It signaled a radical shift in abolitionist philosophy.
What made the Garrisonian movement, the American Anti-Slavery Society movement, so radical was its call for immediate emancipation. This took the place within anti-slavery of colonization and other forms of slower emancipation that called for example, slaveholders to be compensated for the loss of their slaves. And what made immediate emancipation so radical was that it accepted African Americans as fully human equals to white slaveholders or other white Americans.
The transformation of people's attitudes about slavery was so profound in that period of time that it would be like today as if somehow people suddenly came to understand that the internal combustion engine was wrong. Slavery suddenly became a terrible sin, something that destroyed and crushed human beings, exploited them in endless numbers, corrupted the slaveholders themselves, and what used to be condonable, acceptable, and normal suddenly became a tremendous transgression in God's sight.
Garrison was a major force behind abolition's new momentum.
He was an extremely inflammatory writer, very, very provocative in the way he posed moral questions, very, very confrontational in his dealings with people who disagreed with him. His idea of being an editor was not to simply report the news, but to create the news by taking initiatives, criticizing people, calling people to account. It's a kind of advocacy journalism that we don't see anymore.
Agents for the anti-slavery societies traveled the country, speaking in churches and meeting halls, spreading the doctrine of abolition. At first, black abolitionists belonged to separate societies, but eventually they joined with whites in a unified movement. Frederick Douglass, a former slave, quickly rose to prominence.
I think he's one of the great orators of the 19th century. He had all the charm, the good looks, the commanding presence, the ability to appeal to lofty principles, a wonderful knack for mimicking people, a very booming voice, all of the things that you need in the sort of microphone era.
People said I did not talk like a slave, look like a slave, or act like a slave.
Some abolitionists suggested that Douglass, in order to be genuine, should put a little bit of plantation language into his addresses. I mean, of course, this violated everything that Douglass stood for. So you have a situation in which Douglass is trying to break out both of the limits imposed on him by the movement, and also having to live with the fact that he is recognized by many as a very strong and commanding abolitionist.
When Douglass joined the abolition movement, William Garrison was his mentor. But they parted ways when Douglass set out to publish his own abolitionist newspaper, the North Star.
William Lloyd Garrison can be read on the record as being absolutely furious that Frederick Douglass went off as an independent editor. Garrison saw himself very much as the sun in the galaxy of reform, and all the planets were supposed to revolve around him. Douglass's responses to Garrison were to call him for being condescending, for being patronizing. It seems to me that the idea of actually being able to have that kind of debate is one of the great magic moments of American democracy. This is a movement where people could actually debate their own feelings and points of view as people who are black and white, and look each other in the eye and say what was on their mind. Rare at any time.
Women also played an important role in the abolition movement. Speakers such as the Grimke sisters, Sojourner Truth, and Abby Kelly Foster are well known, but hundreds of women whose names are forgotten today also contributed to the cause.
The grand silent army of abolitionists were the women who went door to door, handing out petitions. The women who put anti-slavery curriculum into their nursery schools. The women who, in a variety of different ways, queried their pastors over and over again about taking positions on slavery.
Women were accepted in abolitionist circles as long as they remained in their place.
No woman shall speak or vote where I am moderator. I will not countenance such an outrage on decency.
At the 1840 meeting of the American Anti-Slavery Society, Abby Kelly Foster was elected to serve on a committee. Many members of the society were aghast at the idea of women participating on an equal footing with men. Over this and other differences, the society split in two. But by then, the anti-slavery movement was large enough to encompass these divisions.
Within 4 years, I have seen my principles embraced by thousands of the best men in the nation. I have seen prejudices, which were deemed incurable, utterly eradicated from the breasts of a great multitude. I have seen discussions of slavery going on in public and in private, among all classes and in all parts of the land, and more spoken and written and printed and circulated in 1 month than there formerly was in many years.